Welcome, everyone, to the Orange Design and Hexxen Media Group video podcast. Here we are back again, week number 3, with all the lovely staff here. And today we're going to do an FAQ-style format to keep it a little bit more digestible. I know some of our videos can go a little bit long. Sometimes we get too deep into technical details. Here we're going to give you short snippets that are a little bit easier to digest, a little bit easier to understand. So I'm David Cly. Maya, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Maya Garnot. I am the content director here, leading and overseeing content, SEO, design, and social media.
Eric?
I'm Eric. I am one of our SEO specialists here.
And Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason, also one of the SEO and content specialists.
All right, so we've got all the SEO content specialists. Let's talk about some SEO. So one of the things we get asked quite a bit is, how much does SEO cost? And there's a lot of different articles on this. They're all different, but everybody's going to approach that one differently, right? So, Maya, would you like to go ahead and start off with some of the costs on that, or would you like me to kind of ramble off some?
Well, I can start, but the short and immediate answer to the question is definitely it depends. It depends on a lot of things, on what you're paying for and everything, exactly what you're getting, and also like the level you want to be at, because to a certain point, you get what you pay for. You could start with something modest and introductory for maybe $1,000 to $1,500 a month. If you want to, get something out of it, but you want to start small. But you could also go up into the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a month, or one-time projects in that range. If you want to be really aggressive, or you are in a very saturated industry where there's a lot of competition in the search realm, and there's, your return that you get on it just really depends on what you put into it. And another thing you want to consider is, what is the value of one conversion, one sale, one customer to you.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people don't track that. They'll track rankings, they'll track visits, but they don't have someone that is a guide and says, okay, here's what every single conversion is worth to you, and then here's what every single sign up is worth.
Right, exactly, because we were just talking to a client earlier this week, and they were saying that even just 1 or 2 signups based on web visits would more than pay for our SEO services, because they work with clients on such a level that they are spending, a lot of money. So, in that sense, just one single conversion and our job is done.
Well, what do you think is, because I have my own opinion on this, what do you think is the single biggest factor in SEO cost? I'm going to say that it's the competition in most cases, because that's why you have different tiers of SEO. So like if we're working with a law firm or working with like a home services provider, the reason that those costs are so different, and they're, if it's a franchise, of course, it could be a little bit different, but like when you're looking at law firms, specifically like the big ones, right? The major ones that are all on the front page of Google, the cost to be there, it can be significant because they all have big money invested. And when you go with like a home services or someone of that nature, your plumbers, your HVAC people, et cetera, there's still competition, but there's not so much money and time invested into it.
Right, and there's also enough clients to be able to support, the first few results on the page, I think. But yeah, I think that the competition, the industry you're in, definitely dictates what you can spend or what is possible, because in some of the very competitive and saturated, areas, that initial range I was talking about, the $1,500, isn't really going to, get you results. So that, in that sense, that's just money wasted.
It can get you positions, but I feel like that's one of the things that limits people a lot is like, they'll say, I have $1,500 to spend.
Right.
Okay, that's only going to get, especially when you have an agency, like a team of people working on one person, they're going to have more time to dedicate. But when you have a team of people, it's very difficult to spread that out, right? So if a person if they need content work, if they need local SEO work, if they need Google My Business, if they have really bad backlinks, if the site sucks, right? If the conversion errors, because we get all these rankings, we send them back to this apocalyptically bad-looking site that's just a Word doc with like poor quality phone pictures from 10 years ago on it. That's not going to convert. It's almost like, I wouldn't say they're wasting their money, because some people will still convert just because they need a provider, but it's not going to be at the same rate.
Yeah, and that actually brings us to my other answer to your question about, what are the factors, I guess, are the main factor that determines, a cost or the spend for SEO. I think it's, definitely the industry, because you have to be able to play at the other people's level or the other businesses' level if you want to, really dominate. But the other thing would be just how the strategy or how that budget is allocated, because I was looking at statistics about the average cost for like automated SEO services, which is not what we do. And that's at like the $500 to $1,000 range was what I read.
And they're all pitching it too.
Right.
It's like, this is, guaranteed front, like that's a big red flag for me, is anytime you see guaranteed front page, this guaranteed, all this, it's like, wait a minute. How could you ever guarantee something that you don't own? Like if you don't own Google and all the platforms, there's strategies. Another thing I was thinking of when they say that guarantee, it's like, well, if somebody was paying, let's say $500 a month for SEO, I could probably get them on page 1 in 2 or 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? It's like guaranteed, but when? Right. Is this like this month, next month, or next decade? Because, over time that will have an effect. It will accumulate. You will have those backlinks. You will have additional pages, but it's going to take a long time. And during that period, likely you're going to have a lot of people that are spending a lot more.
Right.
And I don't think the money is not always money. All you're doing is you're paying for time and skill.
Right.
And placing that time and skill in the right areas is what's important.
And that's actually what I was going to say next, is that, there are things we can do that are less labor intensive that can still supplement and be good signals for your site performance. But a lot of the main areas that cost the most in terms of SEO are the ones that you actually need to be effective, to really make waves, basically, which is like the strategy and reporting. Strategy, so you actually have a plan that's tailored to your company in your space, and reporting so that you actually have numbers to see how it's performing and when things need to be changed. And then the other really big thing that takes the time is content focus, because SEO is a lot of things, but a big part of what we provide is tailored content that's a lot of copywriting, but also graphics and infographics, images, video, things like that. But
backlink building,
and Eric and Jason can talk a lot about the manual part of things, which is the writing and the backlink stuff. That it just is time intensive, labor intensive, but that's what differentiates the true competitors, and also white hat from more spammy or underhanded SEO practices.
Well, do you guys want to, this isn't the Dave and my podcast, right. So do you guys want to give some feedback on that?
Sure. I mean, to what kind of on the heels of what Maya was talking about, the content, like when we roll our sleeves up and really get to work, you start getting into that, on-page, off-page SEO practices, where the on-page stuff is where we really get, the content that we create, whether it's, the actual just physical content, or it becomes, dive down in a little bit into the weeds with headers and subheads and, lists and videos and
blogs,
photos.
FAQs. There's, when people think of content, a lot of times they're just like, oh, they're going to add some stuff to pages in my site and it's going to rank. It's like, no. There's so much more supplementary stuff. Right. It's like, first of all, we can go into the technical parts, making sure that certain things match: titles, metadata, URLs, headers, links, etc. And there's some image stuff that we can talk about, on a separate topic. But then, rounding out a whole topic, it's like, if I produce content about, XYZ, so I also need blogs about that. I also need FAQs. I also need other sites that aren't even within my domain that link back using XYZ
and then
text.
Interlinking all of that in your site in a way that makes sense and that tells the search engine, this page is about this and these other pages are about, related to this or whatever, to really, tell search engines and, Google. That's how they are able to understand, your site structure and what information is important to the user if they're looking for something.
Eric, do you want to have a point on that before we move on?
Yeah, just in general about, goes back to what you were saying about the cost. Kind of depends on where you're starting from and where you want to go. Mm-hmm. If your last company just screwed everything up entirely, then it might.
Good point. Yeah, for sure.
But if you have a reasonable base, then it's probably going to cost less to get
Well, how many sites have we taken over that they couldn't start from square one? They were like -10.
Right.
Right, and we're just now
Build that
getting
up.
to the point where we're seeing
100%.
positive growth.
Yeah, and that's
based on
I
all
think
their-
that's a big thing, you know, when you're working with somebody is to have that transparency. Maya, you brought up another good point. You know, we were talking about the reporting. It's like reporting it's not part of technical SEO, but it should be part of an SEO campaign, because
And
if there's no
data
reporting
analysis.
and well, let's just say there's some reporting, but it's not useful, right? Actually
It's
digging
vanity.
down. What's that?
Vanity metrics.
Yeah, exactly. Vanity metrics. And people can cherry pick anything. I mean, you can go in analytics and say, all right, we're not going to look at this, but let's look at this and let's present this. And that's what a lot of these automated ones do. You know, they're automated dashboards, like really fancy because you get to log in. It's like customized and it's like visits and impressions. It's like, well, that's kind of, I mean, it's helpful, but it's kind of pointless. Okay, how many conversions? What conversions did those URLs come from?
Right.
What sources did they come from?
What are they searching to get to those pages? What pages are they
100%.
entering from?
Yeah.
And how long are they on those
And
pages?
you know, when we're looking at like the cost of a total SEO campaign, I definitely think you have to factor in the reporting, because how much do you really want to know, right? Now, I think it's somewhat expected on the lower cost campaigns. You know, if you're looking at $400 or $500 a month, I mean, that's just not where we can operate in, because we can't really provide the results that people are going to expect from that. I could sign people up for that all day long, but I wouldn't, because it's going to take so long to have an effect. And during that time, there's going to be a lot of questions.
Right.
And again, like as Eric said,
that's where it gets
if we
more-
inherit, somebody else's dirty laundry, it's like, oh, great. Now here's something that would take not just one person to fix, but maybe 3 or 4 people to fix over months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
if it-
go ahead.
Good.
If it takes a few years, like you were saying, over that time, Google is going to change what it
Right.
describes too. So when you started out, wherever you started out at, it's not going to be necessarily what.
It's just an uphill run.
Yeah.
Like the longer it takes, I think the worse off it is. And the other thing I was going to say is just that paying that lower amount, and we're not saying that nothing can be done at that amount and that people can't have good services at that level, but often when you pay for or look for like a budget SEO service or whatever, paying that, it's more expensive in the long run. It's like paying for repairs over and over on an old faulty machine or something, when you could, replace it and pay a little bit more to begin with, but then actually start to see the ROI and results of that
I'm going
work.
to sneak in like my one car analogy here. So it's like buying really cheap brake pads and then trying to go racing and then wondering why they
It's not
fail in lap
advised.
2. Right?
Right.
So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. I feel like this is something that a lot of people pay for, but they don't know what they're getting. So the next topic we wanted to cover for this is SEO. What exactly am I paying for?
That is a question that a lot of our prospective clients and current clients that used to be prospective clients cannot answer. I've found, when people come to us from after, they know something about SEO, digital marketing in general. They are looking for a new company. Oftentimes they have a current SEO provider and they're not happy for some reason or another. And so I often ask them, what are you paying for currently? How much are you paying? What are you getting?
And they don't know.
Very often they don't know, or they have a very vague understanding. And that's understandable to a point, because SEO is kind of abstract. There's a lot of different things that can fall under that umbrella. So, it's understandable for the client, but, there's a lot of different things that can go into it. We already discussed earlier how a big part of our strategy is often content focused, on page, on their website itself. And then we also talked about the fact that you also at the higher level, you should also be paying for the strategy, the research from SEO standpoint, keyword research, all of that, and also like the data analytics and reporting.
You brought up a really good point earlier when we were talking about it's not just about the deliverable, right? The deliverable, the content, the backlinks, et cetera, that's always part of it. But there's so much work that goes into, like, when we're creating an SEO proposal, there's so much work before they pay us anything. The research, the competitive analysis, the audience targeting, learning a little bit more about the business. And that's something that we do complimentary. As we start to do more and more, that may change. So if you're looking to get in cheap, do it now. No, but anyway, it's something. Sometimes I find when they're paying for things, they're paying for the wrong things, right? So how many times have we seen a proposal and I mean, big numbers too. I mean, I've looked at other proposals from the people that have shared them. It's like, hey, here's the agreement I have. I'm like, what in the heck is this? I'm paying like $2,000 a month for 2 blog posts and social. And it's like the most generic, stock photoed, horrible, non-personal, and like it might get, what's that?
ChatGPT written
in social form. Yeah, it's like, but here
robotic.
Yeah, robotic. It's like, how many times have you seen the same picture of like the business guys? It's like,
right.
Like nobody looks like that. Like it's staged. Right? And it's like when you go through a social media, it's so obvious now because there's so much of it, right? When you go to a person's social or business's social media page and you just see this wall of like perfect looking, perfectly posed, perfectly staged media with this robotic generic stuff. And I won't stick too much on, blasting poor social media, but it sucks. It's obvious is what I'm trying to communicate.
Right.
And when you're trying to get additional conversions, first of all, that's like if they research you, right? They look at social, generic, horrible stuff. Now, they go to the site. If you're seeing that on like your social media posts, what are you going to see on your blog and FAQs? It's going to be 3 or 4 paragraphs with the stock photo of the most horrible things, just generic, not interesting. There's no spin on, there's no creativity. And unfortunately, a lot of people get grouped into these fancy agreements. I mean, I've seen the emails that people send. Most people probably get them in their inbox now, just spam. Do you want to rank number 1 in Google? Sure. We are experts. No, you're not. Right? But going back to the original topic, what are you paying for? Well, first of all, how much are you paying? And then what is your objective? Right? So if I'm in a more competitive landscape, such as like, e-commerce or injury law or something like that, where everybody's spending, big money, big product money or big, ranking money, because, I mean, think about it. What is one of those cases worth, right? Or even like in healthcare. In healthcare, SEO can be equally difficult because there's things you can't say, there's things you can't say. Financial industry, we work with quite a few people in that. It's the same thing. So part of your SEO is not just here's all the deliverables, but here's the specific things we can and can't say. Here's how we make it personable. Here's how we actually communicate who this company is. Because if you think about it, in the internet and social media, you meet the company before you actually meet them or talk to anybody, right? Yeah.
I think that's one of the. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was going to say I think that's one of the best things that we provide as a company as a whole. We have a broad range of clients from a bunch of different industries, and to go to your car analogy earlier, you come to us and or you bring your car into a shop, and we're not gonna the mechanic's not gonna say you have a $4,000 problem.
Right.
When you come to us, for SEO, it's not a one size fits all plan.
You see a lot of those too. It's like a
absolutely.
generic
like
spin.
You were talking about the emails that come at you, the spam.
This is our package, and
that's the other thing that you brought up too. That goes back to like the cost situation is that if you're locked into a contract, you sign, this company signs you, and after 1 or 2 months you realize it's you want to give more time than that for SEO purposes.
I've had to have people wait.
Right. Yeah.
10 months before they could even hire us because they're locked into something.
Right.
Like that.
But if you realize that it's not what you wanted or not what you expected, the communication isn't there from the company, then, that puts you in a really tricky situation.
I think that's something that we do that here. It's not commonplace, and a lot of the things that I've read, they say, oh, it's a bad business decision. You should always focus on the recurring revenue. It's like, no, I want to focus more on like the recurring relationship. Mm-hmm. And if I lock somebody into a contract, it's like, think about this. If you were like looking at SEO like dating, right, and you're like instantly marrying this person after the first week, and now you're locked in for a predetermined amount of time. What if it goes sour, right? What if something happens in month 2? Like, this person's a maniac, or it's just not a good fit, right? You're not vibing. You're locked into that for a predetermined amount of time, and we don't practice that here for that reason. We always want to prove ourselves. We don't require the annual contracts for marketing or SEO unless it's something that's predetermined that we have to for a certain period of time, right? And it's openly and transparently discussed. Here's exactly what we're going to do. Here's exactly when this starts. Here's exactly when it ends. We'll readdress it at that time.
And often when we do that, we provide like a discount or something. But
yeah, we've done that plenty of times too. Yeah,
right.
If they bundle things together, obviously it's a little bit cheaper.
Yeah. Back to the question though of like, what are you getting, that I also wanted to touch on is that we talked about the fact that it's kind of ambiguous what SEO even is. And I think we have a good balance here where it's deliverables, where there's concrete, this is what I'm getting. I know what I'm paying for. I know what their time went into, but also on the other side, the strategy behind it and some of those supplemental things as well. But the other thing I wanted to talk about really quick is that SEO is so many things. You already talked about social media. That affects SEO, your website itself, the technical part of things. So that could include, building a new website could be you investing in SEO in the long run. And that depends on if the company designing and developing your site understands SEO. You could go to a company that doesn't do SEO and just does the design or the development, and that can negatively affect your performance. And, just all those different things that tie into SEO. So even if you may or may not be paying for this or that, that all is a part of your plan. That all is part of SEO indirectly.
Well, and I just want to say too, it's rare when we create even like a design development proposal that doesn't include some type of baseline. If it's literally just a thing that they're going to market through social media and email campaigns or something like that, then generally speaking, those type of sites don't really need SEO because you're going to be manually paying money to throw traffic at it. But if it's any type of rebuild to where there's even the thought that they're wanting this thing to rank, we do have to have that baseline in place. And I've taken over sites where, like, you look at the homepage. I mean, it's like, look at the metadata of your homepage. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's try to rank for homepage.
Even worse, they have
or service 1 or service 2.
They'll have like templated language in there that's like lorem ipsum, or like your pictures go here, or something like that.
Photo goes here. Yeah,
I mean,
we're talking about some extreme examples, but it's comical because it just shows the attention to detail that as the business owner, like I like when you were talking about like the mechanic analogy, because think about it like this: when you take your car and something's broken, they're not going to say, this is how we're going to fix it, and here, I have to use this tool and this and that. What they're going to say is, okay, here's the problem, here's roughly the parts, here's the rough cost of each part. And I think that's reasonable for what you should expect in an SEO proposal. I mean, we do, for clients that request it, what kind of tools are you using? Well, we're going to use this to track it, we're going to use this to report it, this is an example of what it's going to look like. But I don't think that people, they're business owners, they're not expecting to be that involved, and we do welcome the people, if they want to be that involved. They don't want to
be babysitting us. They're doing this so that they don't have to handle it internally, and they want to know the company knows what they're doing, but doesn't have to involve them every step of the way. Oftentimes,
100%.
Another analogy would be like an injury lawyer, like you said, where you don't want to argue with an insurance company, you don't want to get subpoenas, you don't want to have to go to court, so you just hire somebody to take care of all that for you.
Right.
And they're communicative the whole time.
Yeah, and then you got to answer a few questions, answer the phone every now and then.
Yeah.
But
well, you don't need to know exactly their strategy.
Holding your hand, showing you exactly what it is.
Well, let's talk about another fact of like accessibility. It's not. This isn't so much just like what are you paying for in terms of SEO. It's also like what are you paying for from an agency or a group that you choose to do your marketing agreement with. Is that like with us? There's not this whole system that you have to go through to reach somebody. Hey, I have a question. Cool, let's set up a call an hour from now, or they just call, right? Which works sometimes. It does. It can be a little bit distracting, but we try to be as accommodating as possible. But how many people out there do you think can actually just pick up the phone, call somebody, and say, "Hey, I have a question about my marketing campaign and what's going on with it"?
Yeah, and that's a big part of a benefit of an agency over like a freelancer is you have a full team, or an agency versus internal is you have this entire team dedicated to you and your account, and even though they're working on other accounts as well, but they are, it's an entire business of people with different specialties and areas of expertise that are at your disposal, working for you, working toward, your goal for your business.
Yeah, and freelancers are tough too because you run into all sorts of legal agreements that are usually non-existent. You don't know what you own. Right. What happens if this person runs off? I mean, there's big dangers. I mean, the cost is part of it for sure. Yeah, you can save some money going with the freelancer. And I'm not, trying to hate on any freelancer. There's some of them that are really great. There's two problems that I noticed. One, that they usually don't have a holistic approach to something. It's like, hey, they've kind of found a knack for this.
Right. They're
got
one
some
person,
agreements.
they can't.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
there's not really something there's not a system set up. If this person doesn't do something, another one will catch it. You don't have people, because as human beings, we make mistakes. It happens.
Or you just get too busy and you
100%.
get overwhelmed.
Well, and that's what I was going to next is what happens when that freelancer gets too many clients, right? So that freelancer gets 5 or 6 clients. Oh, crap. Now I've got this massive workload.
Well,
They're
then
only
they
one
could
person.
hire people and become a business themselves.
That's possible, and some of them do.
And
But usually,
they have to increase their prices if they do that.
exactly.
Right.
Now you negate the whole price argument, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. I feel like we've got that one. The next one is organic SEO better than paid? Should I do organic, PPC, or both? So I'm going to throw a couple acronyms out there that people have probably seen. They don't know what they mean. So there's SEO, which is search engine optimization. There's SEM, which is search engine marketing. And there's SMM, which is social media marketing. And generally speaking, those are like the 3 main things that'll go into a marketing campaign.
Digital marketing.
Digital, correct. Yes, thank you for clarifying for that. But I don't think a lot of people really know what goes into each one, right? So it's like search engine marketing. Okay, what am I doing there? Well, basically, you're going to have your AdWords and you're going to have your display ads, et cetera. So for SEO, it's the organic side, meaning non-paid. Like you're paying an agency, you're not paying the search engine.
There may be some like paid things like the listing, the profiles, things like that.
Correct.
But generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, and that's usually like on per provider basis, like
Right.
where you're trying to get people listed at.
Or
You have to pay for some, right?
Right.
You have to pay for the setup time because they're not going to know how to set it up. They're not going to know that it exists to begin with. And they're not going to know all the good ones, right? That they can influence it. And then with social media marketing. So let's just start off with the core of the question. Is organic SEO, I would say, better than paid SEM, right?
paid ads.
Paid ads,
Easiest
right?
to say.
And I'm going to talk about this more from an experience standpoint than I am from an opinionated one, because I've managed AdWords campaigns for a long time. Okay, I've run thousands of social media campaigns for people, whether it be simple as boosting posts, advertising pages, creating new audiences, advertising services, remarketing. It's all across the board. What I've seen from experience when looking at and communicating with clients is that the organic conversions always seem to be of a better quality. It's someone's genuinely interested in the service versus just like the equivalent of tire kicking, right? It's like, and for those that don't know, tire kicking is where you're not really buying. You're just, it's an old analogy, right? We're no teenagers here. But it's essentially where you're just kind of going through. It's like click, 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 click. Okay, what do they offer? What do they offer? And you can have a lot of clicks, even with a really nice landing page, even with a really well-written ad that Google says, hey, your score on this is amazing, and we're going to put it out there. You can have a lot of clicks happen before you actually get a conversion. And what I see a lot of companies that are inexperienced with this, they don't track the cost. They don't track how many clicks did I get. What is my average conversion worth? What is my average whatever sign up or purchase worth? And they don't put all those metrics together. And when they do, generally speaking, they see that AdWords is usually not as profitable as they think. And I do think it has its place. I've always said that AdWords and other paid media should be used to supplement the lack of organic ranking in a source. So let's say we've got a list of like 10 primary keywords, because you go on to hundreds, right? But let's just keep it simple. There's 10 primary keywords. We rank great for 5 out of 10 of them. The other 5, obviously you're still working on those with SEO, but those would be the ones, if you're still on page 2, you're lower on page 1, those would be the ones that I would advertise for.
Yeah, I think another thing that you kind of hinted at is that organic or SEO in general is more sustainable, and ads are more short term. So it's kind of short term versus long term. So especially like if we're taking on an account that needs leads right now, but
Right.
we have a long term SEO trudge ahead of us. Those ads can help supplement the in between. They can also help just kind of support the organic work that you're doing.
Well,
and
I want to touch on like
sorry, go
why.
ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I wanted to bring up something. Another part that I have experience in is like most people don't fire and hire another SEO company because they're doing great, right? They're already losing money. They've already lost money, right? Now there are some things like follow up and communication. I've seen it be a huge part of that. Somebody asks for something, can you update this picture? Yeah. 3 weeks later, it's still not updated. It's like, seriously, just silly little stuff that compounds over time and ultimately leads to a bigger issue. But with AdWords being used, yes, sometimes it's a smart decision to give a business a temporary boost with that while you figure out what's going on, while you start the long, like you said, trudge through SEO, because half the time they don't even know what's been happening on their site. They have this massive pile of bad backlinks, poor quality content, stock media, broken links. Yeah, the list goes on. You never know what you're getting into. So I think that it's a good option to use, but you have to use it carefully. And another thing, what I like about organic more than paid is organic, reasonably speaking, there's different competition in all different industries, but organic, you can better plan for the cost versus you can with AdWords. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, let's take a look at an AdWords campaign, and let's say it starts at, I don't know, nice little number, $7-8 a click or something like that. Great. So you pay that money, you create this really nice ad, and now you're outranking your competitors. Let's talk about just ads, right? Now your ad's outranking theirs. Well, they're not going to just let that happen, right? So I wouldn't. I'd be like, you know what? Screw you. $1 more, $1 more, $1 more.
Competitors do that all the time.
All the time.
Sit there and
Not
click
only
on.
But click on each other's to sabotage, but also to advertise for those branded terms that to show up before the competitor actually does when you're looking for them.
Yeah. And so it's difficult to plan. So I'll have clients that say, and this is real world examples. I'll have a client that says, I want to spend, $5-10 grand a month in AdWords. Okay, great. We'll structure it out. This is roughly how many, we'll do our research. This is roughly how many clicks you're going to get. This is what you can expect, et cetera, right? Reasonably speaking. We can't predict the future, but we can use, training and skill sets and past performances for similar industries, et cetera, to determine that. However, 3 months in, that budget might change because now instead of, let's call it $8, now it's $12. Okay, now more people are starting to get into it, right? Now it's $20. So if I take a campaign that started at 8 and now is at 20, you've more than doubled what you have to spend. And to some point, that's going to continue as the more competitive it gets, the worse it gets. I mean, you look at some of the top terms. I mean, I've seen keywords for a couple $100. And in extreme examples, I mean, the average for tough competitive industries, if you're looking like your average HVAC stuff, $20-30, but that adds up quick, right? You get into the legal realm, now you're talking $80 to $100 or more. And how many of those can you really sustain, right? Let's say you think an aggressive budget is 10 grand a month in AdWords. Well, if you're blowing $120, $150 a click and nobody's converting because of all the other things that we've talked about in other videos, that can burn up pretty quick. Whereas organic, it's like, look, we're going to analyze all the competition. We're going to break it down and say, here's your key targets. Here's the key keywords, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? The primary keywords, as we call them internally. And this is a rough timeline of what it's going to take. This is all the steps that we need to put in place. Now, yes, you're going to have to pay that money, whatever that marketing campaign budget is, for a period of time. It doesn't happen immediately. Sometimes it happens, sooner than most. It usually depends upon their budget. Mm-hmm. But once you obtain that, it's much harder for somebody to unseat you, right? So if I'm number one in whatever industry across 10 primary keywords or even 5, those 5 are really going to take a lot of work for somebody to unseat once they've been awarded that position.
Right, and along those same lines, when I said it's more sustainable, the organic SEO strategy, especially for on-site stuff, on-page optimization, the actual content creation, all that stuff, you own that forever, so it can continue to do work for you for a long time. It can continue to bring leads. It can continue to rank versus the ad. You paid one time for somebody to click on it, and now you have to pay it again to be able to be seen again.
And potentially more every time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And
there is some ways, like from having so much experience with AdWords, there's a lot of strategies where you can get the costs less than what the expected bid is. Quality score, ad rank, there's other thing, a relevancy score. There's a lot of things that come into that. But at the same time, you're still going to be somewhat bound by this is what the general market is paying. It's like if the new car price for whatever model is 50 grand, you're not going to go in there and say, I got 25. They're going to say, get out of here.
Right.
It's just not going to work.
And that's another thing that I was thinking about that you just hit on is proper management. When you're paying for the ads to be run, you can pay for, especially now with Google ads, like the amount of copy you could put in is so limited, which is probably, I speculate, why they changed the name from AdWords to just ads, Google ads, you know, like there's very little you can do in some senses. So anyone could technically, like look up how to set up the ads, put in the very basics, but to be able to have the strategy, and to do it the smart way, bid at certain times, or if you have a limited budget to put more of it and in a short amount of time, and then take a break or whatever, whatever the strategy might be.
That's what I see, when I take over campaigns from other agencies, a lot of that, it's all in the details. The details a little detail can mean a lot of money. Like you said, certain times of the day, when is it running? When is it not running? When have people historically seen the biggest increases in terms of traffic from that, right? Because that's essentially what you're paying for. Yes, you're paying for visibility, but it's traffic. You're trying to get them to a place. And back what I was talking about with one of my other videos is if you're paying all this money to AdWords and you're sending them to a poor quality source, a conversion source, that's, let's say it's not mobile friendly, which is rare, but there's a difference between like mobile first and mobile friendly, right? You can have something that's not really optimized for mobile. It's kind of just smashed all together. Technically, yes, it'll still pass Google's guidelines, but I think that when you have someone who's really qualified in doing it, they're going to plan out the entire process of that, right? And you're going to say, first of all, what are the key terms? What are the key times? What are the ways we can get this to be as least amount of spend as possible? And then what is the objective? What do we want them to do? What do we want them to feel? What is the action, right? Is it, I want them to call? Okay, well then don't hide the damn phone number, right? Make click-to-calls and conversion sources there all the time, but not so shouty, right? I've seen ads where I've clicked something, as soon as I get to the site, pop up. I haven't even done anything yet.
Right.
I don't even know. I kind of know why I'm here, but I just wanted to read a little bit.
And that's the other thing too with the ads, that the landing page, whether it's however it's designed or whatever, is make sure it's relevant and that the ad itself isn't misleading, and then you're getting them to a different page. You want the entire experience to be cohesive, and like you said before, with like the relevancy score, the page that you're sending them to, needs to be a part of the ad experience and the entire process. But I think for the question you're asking, which one is better, and we've talked a lot about how, we've talked about some of the merits of the ads, the PPC stuff too. We've talked a lot about how the SEO, definitely has a lot of benefits. We see that as a key part of our strategy for a lot of our clients. Ultimately though, it depends on the business and it depends on their clients, or their
starting
customers.
point too. I think it depends a lot on
Right.
where are they starting from, because not every business can wait, let's call it 6 to 8 months for real SEO to have an effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they don't have the budget, right? If they're not able to be aggressive, I think it makes sense to be transparent with them and say, look, you're kind of in a rough spot, right? This is where you're starting from, big picture, and we do that with our clients. It's like, here's the starting metrics of you versus a competitor, right? They're either within reach, they're light years ahead, right? And obviously there's places all in between there, because every single one of them is different. But it's really going to depend, from my perspective, where they're starting from and what they're expecting over the period of time, right? One thing we didn't touch on, just to go on a related tangent, social media marketing. I think that should be talked about a little bit. With that, it's the same kind of thing. Is that where your audience is, right? I see a lot of campaigns that are just, giant net and hoping they catch something, right? They're throwing out big nets, big budgets, and nobody's tracking it. They'll report some metrics. They're just not really that good. It's very vague. It's like, I don't know how many times here's the impressions. Okay, did anybody do anything? I don't know.
Yeah, I think with social media, there's a lot more like nurturing of the links. You have to have, the whole reason for social media is, for people to go on there and be social in a sense, so a lot of the success from social media, whether it is organic or paid, forms of marketing or different strategies on social media is the like community aspect or the interacting aspect, or speaking directly to those users and catering to them and building a community and talking to them, and not just paying for the ad and letting it sit there. There's definitely value, or there's to be able to reach people on a lot of these platforms, you do have to pay, it seems, but
it's getting worse,
right?
Yeah,
but there's just so much.
They're limiting a lot of reach of organic posts on social media, which makes sense for the platform. I mean, they're a business, but we talked about this in one of our other videos. Is now that they're starting to limit the reach, it's like you'll create a really great post that's well optimized, that uses created media versus stock media. It's more original, right? And they'll show it to like 20, 30 people. So now you have to boost it. And again, I get it from a business perspective, but I think if you're going in with a social media marketing budget in mind, have clear goals outlined and make sure that you're seeing how that's being tracked. Referring URLs, entry point URLs. We talked about landing pages, but a lot of people won't do that. They'll send them to internal pages of the site. Again, more of that A to Z, like what do I want people to do? And is this destination ready for that?
Yeah, a fine-tune approach rather than that like wide net you were talking about earlier.
And have the approach specific both to your audience, but also to the medium that you're using, which is what I was trying to say is, well, one, you said this at the beginning, that it's different people, different types of people that you're reaching. That are someone who's going to read a lot and do a lot of research and look at a lot of different factors versus someone who is in a hurry or just doesn't need to know all that information and will just find whatever is close, the first thing that comes up, and that's enough for them. Mm-hmm. And also for, certain businesses or in certain verticals, that style works. I think that's important to keep in mind is this strategy that you're talking about with using PPC just to supplement or just to kind of fast track or, to kind of get things going at the beginning. That makes a lot of sense for a lot of the accounts that we work on, but also like for some e-commerce or some, service-based things like plumbing or HVAC, if it's an emergency or something weather related.
Toilets overflowing and spilling all over the floor. Plumber now.
Yeah. Exactly. And so you have to keep that in mind for the business itself. So you have to, figure out what platforms make the most sense, but also, if you're using multiple strategies, which I think often for a good marketing plan, we've already talked about this, it is comprehensive. There's a lot of different points to it. But you have to design that. I think, Jason, you were touching on that. What you put on social media or what you put in a local service ad, needs to reflect the audience that's going to see that and their intent behind it. The emergency need a plumber now versus I'm building a new home and I really want to think, I want someone I trust and I want to, see their reviews and their, see the person's face. That would be more organic where you can have more information there in one place.
It's also different between the industry. Like if you're having someone come to your home versus you going to them, right? Yeah. That's what I see with a lot of the organic stuff with like home services based things is they're showing up in your home, right? You're going to do a little bit more research. You're not just going to click on the first link and not know who's showing up or the history of them.
Yeah. If they do a bad job, then you have to deal with it and
100%.
Hire somebody else. And
100%.
Some other stranger's got to come in and fix it. Yeah. I mean,
or especially like if my partner isn't at home, is if he gets concerned about, like if I'm home alone and if we have a service person showing up, like, sometimes you can't help it, but it is nice to have an idea of what to expect and have the integrity, just to know more about the business. But like I said before, there's some situations and also just some people where that doesn't, cross their mind, or that's not, that doesn't go into their buying decision. So I think there's definitely a place for those more immediate conversion type of mediums.
Well, and a lot of times with our marketing campaigns, we'll structure them to where it has a bit of both. I mean, I know that organic is generally, from all of our experience, it's the best. Over a long period of time, it's going to be the cheapest because, as you said,
it's the best bang for your buck.
It is. It might be more expensive, just because you won't see the immediate performance. but in the long term, it's ultimately the best strategy. Most people just don't stick with it long enough because they don't see the results.
Right, and it's stable, like you said. You can predict. You know exactly what you're getting. You know exactly what you're paying. Well, if you're with
if you're transparent,
right, exactly. Yeah. But you know what you're paying.
You know, that's what we were talking about in one of our other videos. Is like just knowing what you're actually getting when somebody's
that's important.
doing one of these campaigns. And that's why I was saying, like, splitting it up and saying, look, we're going to put a lot of effort into SEO because we know over a long period of time that's going to be the best one. But also, let's try a social media campaign. Let's not start out like, you know, at your max budget and like throw all that into it. Let's spend a little bit of money, see if it works, and then, you know, what I've always said is, let's start out at 50% of your spend and see what happens. You know, in terms of like your if you say I've got 10 grand a month to spend in social media marketing, let's spend 5 and see how that works. And then if I can get a definitive answer to that, you know, here's where all the little things can be ironed out. Here's where areas we can improve after looking at the metrics. It should be reasonable to accept that if I double that budget, I should close to double the results, right? Let's try little things first, just as, you know, spending a ton of money out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a ceiling to that, though, at a certain point. You can't, you know, someone watching this can't expect every time they double their money, they'll get double. 100%. You know, there's a certain amount of people
there's going to be diminishing
returns.
It's specifically like when you're looking at local businesses, like when you look at ad frequency, like how many times it's actually shown, like you start getting the ad shown to like this, the frequency like 3 times, it's like, leave me alone.
Right.
Like I didn't click on it the first time, right? And that just comes down to the proper setup of the campaign and how that's managed.